Hey, Eric. So excited to talk to you about the new single.
Thank you so much, Rich. It's definitely an honor to have this conversation with you.
Thank you so much. So let's start at the beginning. Can you talk about your transition and tell us about, you were the front man of Disciples of Babylon, and now you're going into your solo venture. Can you talk about that transition?
Yeah, well, for me, it's interesting because after dealing with the heartache of and the heartbreak of leaving the project, I'd been a solo artist. Actually, before I formed even the band, I had already been doing my solo stuff for many, many years. So it was an easy transition. It was just obviously going over the initial heartache and heartbreak of leaving the project. And so for me, it was a natural transition to get back to it. But it did take a little bit of getting used to. Because, obviously, as you know, in a band dynamic, you're dealing kind of in a democratic process. You've got multiple people that you're bouncing ideas off of and everything. And so for me, it was weird getting back to that mindset of being alone now, and I'm having to make all the decisions and I'm responsible for everything that's going on with what I'm doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So how did your experience as the frontman for Disciples of Babylon influence your current musical style that you're working on?
Yeah, well, I've always been rooted in rock and hard rock and metal music for pretty much all my life, even though I listened to just everything. I mean, I've listened to everything because, growing up in a house where my dad was a musician and my mom was just a huge, a fan of music, I had all kinds of music growing up around me. So, but that was the music that I was really attracted to, and what I kind of leaned towards was rock and hard rock. And so in the process of this, when I decided that I was going to be doing this back on my own again, I realized that even though this first song with Out of This World definitely is rooted kind of in that rock, kind of almost alternative type of music, I want to definitely stretch my wings moving forward. So I am going to be taking a lot of chances with different things that I'm going to experiment with. As far as musically, I feel like I need to stretch my wings more. And so there's going to be some kind of left curves coming for people that might be thinking that they're hearing something that they think is going to be me, but it's going to be in a totally different direction. So I want to try to take some chances in terms of that.
That's great to hear. Let me back up for a minute. What led to your departure from Disciples of Babylon and made you want to return to being a solo artist?
Well, it was basically a number of reasons. Number one, I think it had already run its course. The band had already run its course in terms of everything that was going on. And I felt like I needed to say more as far as me as an artist. And I felt like there was a lot of things that were happening within myself that I realized that I wasn't saying. And so that was one thing. And of course, there was a lot of other reasons that went into that decision as well, too, that I won't necessarily get into. But the main thing was, I'm a person that likes to move forward. I don't like to look backwards in terms of what I'm doing. And so I felt like it was time to kind of sever that tie. And if I really wanted to make a statement moving forward as an artist, I felt like it wasn't going to be through that avenue. And so that was one of the main reasons why I just like to always keep moving forward in terms of what I'm doing as an artist. And I feel like we only have a finite amount of time on this earth. And I feel like I have a lot to say and a lot to want to express. And so I felt like I needed to do this in order to kind of get back to myself. It's weird. It's kind of come like full circle. The idea of the band was because I missed that whole camaraderie between bouncing off ideas between people, and you're like on this mission of, one for all and all for one. But I realized in the process that with that comes a certain amount of responsibility in terms of what you're doing within the confines of that project. I just felt like it just came to its natural conclusion. And I felt like in order for me to continue moving forward, doing music and being artistic and making statements creatively, I felt like I needed to do that because I didn't want to stop playing music, and I never want to stop playing music. So I felt like this is the only way I can do this now, is to come back like full circle to me being a solo artist. So that was kind of the reason why for the departure. So
it's interesting hearing you speak about the journey, back to being a solo artist. Let me ask you, how would you describe the evolution of your sound from the time that, you were with Disciples to your new solo work?
Well, interestingly enough, the sound really was the sound where I wanted to take the band Two, I had originally presented Out of This World to the band prior to me departing that project as a statement of where I thought the direction of the band should be going. I mean, I had spoken to several of the members of the band and told them that I want to try to take risk and try to challenge ourselves musically and artistically speaking, for people to not think that that's where we're going. When you think that we're going one place, we're taking a left turn. And that's kind of what I've always wanted to do. And I think a lot of the artists that I've loved and had a lot of respect for over the years, like David Bowie and people of that ilk, always just kept, Madonna, that just kept pushing the envelope and kept reinventing themselves. And that's kind of where I come from, that kind of school of thought that you can do the same thing again and keep that same formulaic thing and appease people. But I don't know. I just want to challenge myself in terms of pushing the envelope. And so the idea of the sound of the band to where it was going with me coming back to as a solo artist was really the same kind of direction. I mean, these are the areas that I had wanted to go into with the band. So like I said, I originally presented the idea of the song to the band. A funny thing happened when I started listening to the song back. I realized I had already known at that point that I was going to leave the band. I knew I was going to leave the band literally about a year before it happened. This is, mind you, whoever's listening to this is during the pandemic. So we were locked down and a lot of things were happening. And so your mind just goes into a million different directions when you have all that time on your hands. And so about a year when I really decided that I'm going to go from the project, I had already presented that song to the band. But what happened was when I started listening back to the demo, I realized man, this is just a great, great song, at least for me. Like me as a writer, when I'm writing something, and if it's a melody or something that just continues to keep coming back to me and I can't forget it, and it's just all on top of you, it's something when I realize I have something special, at least me. And I know a lot of other writers think that way. And with this song, there was just something about it that was just so compelling to me. And I realized, I said, well, okay, I presented it to the band. Nothing is going to happen with this because I'm going to leave the band. And I just figured this would be a great kind of kickoff for me to kind of restart my solo career and kind of relaunch my solo career. It's just a song that I couldn't get out of my head. And, some of the people that have heard this, by the time you're listening to this interview, obviously the song's going to be out, but the few people that did hear it had that same reaction, that it was like, wow, I want to hear it again and again and again. It's just a very infectious kind of feel to it. So for me, that's kind of the reason why. It was almost like the calling card for me to come back out and present myself as an artist again.
There was this band of time, a significant amount of time, and I'm just curious, what led you to take that kind of hiatus between, leaving Disciples and now coming out with the release of Out of This World?
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, like I alluded to earlier, I had been through this once before with another project that I had been in for many years, and I invested a lot of time and effort and energy too. And it was a heartbreaking loss. I mean, for anybody that has put their whole life into something and then it just fails, it's a tough thing to deal with. Luckily, because I had that experience years and years ago, it was something that was familiar when this happened with Disciples. And so, yes, I went through a very depressing period emotionally, just because I felt like this is another, failure for all intents and purposes. And, and it's tough when you're building something from the very beginning and you're building it up to where it got to, and then you feel like the rug's being pulled from under you. It's a tough thing. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but I knew I had to walk away from it. That was the one difference between the last time and this time that something like this had happened, that I knew I had to walk away from it for my own good, for my own well-being, mentally. And, we'll get into that later from a mental health standpoint. But I think once I took that time to mourn and grieve the loss of the ending of the project, I felt like, okay, this has happened to me before. I've been through this before. I just, I know what I need to do. And I knew instinctively, because the last time, and you and I have talked about this story, I went through a very dark depression with this for many, many years after this whole thing had happened to me once before with the previous project that I was in. So this was nothing new to me. So it was heartbreaking, but I felt like, okay, I can get through this. I just need to lean on what I learned from the last experience. The one thing that I did come to the conclusion was, and I think in a weird way, this song was a savior for me in terms of me continuing to do this musically, to pursue this, was because I have such a deep passion and I, like I told you earlier, to want to create, and I feel like I have a lot to say, and I feel like there's not a lot of time to say it. And so I want to say it when I can do it. That was the reason, that motivated me to say, okay, well, I know I'm going to continue making music. So that's not a question. It's just a matter of how it's going to manifest itself this time around. And so that's how I kind of came back to that full circle conclusion that I was going to become a solo artist again and just continue to pursue it, but just on my own now. And just, I only have to answer to myself. I don't have to answer to anybody else, and I can just, move accordingly.
Okay, I want to talk about the song itself now.
Yeah.
How would you describe your new single, Out of This World?
Well, I feel like it's a unique song in every way. It's something that's a little bit left of center for me in terms of the approach and everything, but it was one of those things. Like I said, I feel like this song was like a savior for me just personally in a lot of ways. I mean, this song was written deep into the pandemic or towards the end when we were starting to slowly come out of it. But it was a very dark time for me in terms of being alone. I tend to and you know this about me, I'm kind of a loner. I'm kind of like, we talked about this in terms of just ourselves. I'm so immersed in my work, just with everything that I'm involved with from, our music projects or anything that we're working on, that it's a very solitary world. And I do love being alone. I'm almost that nomadic lifestyle. I do love that, but that has its limits. You get to a certain point where you just want to get out. You have to go around other people, and just to feel like you're alive, there's only so much you can take being cooped up in your silo. And so for me, this song was written from the standpoint of, it came at a time when, like I said, we were knee deep in the pandemic, and I felt that it was me dealing with a lot of emotions, dealing with the emotions that the band was coming to an end. And I knew that even before I even had said that was coming to an end. So there was all these endings coming, but I felt like there was new beginnings, but I just didn't know how they were going to manifest themselves. So this song for me is very unique in a lot of ways. It's very addicting. I think you hear the song once and you want to hear it again and again. And I thought that was something really special in terms, as a writer, writing music. That's obviously what you want. Any musician will tell you that, or any writer will tell you that you want to have something that's strong and that's going to make an impact. And I feel like this song, because of the subject matter, will have that impact in terms of the meaning behind it. But yeah, it came at a very dark time for me. I had lost my grandmother, a year or two before, dealing with that loss because I was very close to my grandmother. And so that was a really tough time for me. And it's just when you're alone with yourself, your mind can wander. And so for me, writing this song was talking about those subjects, but just metaphorically presenting it in a different way.
All right, well, let's talk about the inspiration then for you. What was the inspiration behind Out of This World?
Like I said, it came from a very dark place. We were knee deep in the pandemic. And like a lot of people in the world, I'm not the only one. I suffer from depression. You and I have had these conversations, Rich, about this. You have the same, we deal with the same issue. And for me, depression is a very kind of almost nefarious thing in a way. It triggers when you least expected. I could be doing something and being happy and normal, and there could be a thought or something that you're watching, anything that just triggers something, and all of a sudden, at least this is the way that it happens to me, and then you go down this rabbit hole and you start thinking about something, and then it just starts snowballing. And so the idea with this song was, metaphorically speaking, it's talking about alien abduction. But the reason why I felt like that was a good metaphor for what I was trying to get across in the message was the idea of I just feel like I want to just get away from everything. I just want to get away from everything and everything. So why not get abducted by an alien and go to another planet and just be away from all the chaos and all the craziness that goes on in our daily lives? I wasn't necessarily trying to run away from the problem. I wanted to face it, but I just felt like that was the way that I could express what I was trying to get across. The song, even though when you read the lyrics, it sounds like it's talking, which it is, about alien abduction, it's more deeper than that. It's about what people go through on a daily basis and the people that, like I say, this song is about the nerds, the people that didn't fit in. I never fit in. I felt like an outcast. This song is for those people, hopefully trying to bring more awareness, which is happening, which is really great that we're living in a time now where mental health and well-being is becoming more prolific in terms of people understanding it, and people are talking about it more. There's more of a conversation happening with it, which makes me happy. But I want to try to further that and try to help people along the way. And that's the idea behind this song. It just goes deeper than just the lyrical content of being abducted.
Okay, well, you mentioned that, Out of This World is deeply personal for you. And I'm wondering if you can just elaborate on that.
Yeah, I think for just all the reasons that I said. Like I said, this was written during a very dark time just in my life when all these things were converging. We had the pandemic, everybody was isolated. I was planning to leave the band because I felt like it just couldn't go any further where we could take it. And then it was just going through that initial mourning. You go through that loss. It's almost like somebody died, which I did deal with that in a lot of ways too. I had people that I knew that were friends that died from COVID, and family and all of these things that were going on. But at the same time, there was a beautiful side to it in a weird kind of way, to where I felt like this helped a lot of people around the world get back to the basics of learning what it is to be around family again. So in a weird way, with all the tragedy and the people that died during this time, I hope and I pray that it really kind of lit up a light under people to realize what's really important about being together and just community, and just you and I having this conversation right now and bonding in this way, how important it is for people that are suffering from depression and being alone and isolated, how important it is for people to reach out and for people to try to help one another. We're so divided. We're living in this world now that is just so completely divided and divisive in every way. And I believe that music, and I've always been a believer of this, is the only medium. I don't care, not religion, not politics, nothing can bring people together than music. And I think that's the most powerful thing in the world that can bring people together, no matter what your political affiliations are, no matter what your religious backgrounds are. That's one thing that we can, unifyly agree with, that music, I believe, brings people together. And that's the most powerful form of uniting people. So that's why I feel I've been put here on this earth, was to write music that connects with people, that talks about different subject matter, that can bring people together. And so my idea behind the song, and that it comes from a deep personal thing, is a message of hopefully hope as well too. I mean, because the song, it's a sad song, even though it didn't end up, it sounds a little bit inspiring when you hear the final production of it. But the song when you hear the demo versions, which we'll get into later when we talk about, the demos and the whole iterations of how the song became, the song essentially is incredibly sad. It's really, really sad. There's no happy ending in this song. So my whole idea is to put the message out and to try to get people to understand that we are fragile people and we need to help one another. And that's kind of the whole idea behind that.
It's so interesting listening to you because, so many of the themes that you're talking about are deeply personal. I relate to a lot of them. I mean, like you, I too am a loner, and I'm curious, how does it feel to you as an artist to be putting out a song like this that is so personal to you? And how do you hope it's received by your listeners?
Yeah, well, what I hope is that people obviously fall in love with the music and the song, but what I think deeper is that they get the message of what it's talking about, and that people will come away from it feeling inspired and feeling hopeful and trying to maybe reach out to people. I mean, my whole goal with this song is to create to start a conversation, stuff that's already been going on in society where people are talking more about mental health, but really talking about helping one another, especially with the people that don't have a voice, that don't have a way to articulate what it is that they're trying to say. And I know there's a lot of people that might be listening to this that feel that way, that feel like they're alone. They don't have anybody, and God forbid, some of them are wanting to take their lives. And hopefully with this song, it'll inspire them that there's more to life and that there's a lot of beautiful things in the world. And so my idea is really to just try to bring people together. I've always wanted to be not a divider, but a uniter with my music. And that's kind of the reasoning behind this song and why it's so deeply personal, and what I'm hoping to accomplish that people will get from it, that it's about trying to unite people and trying to be aware of the people that need help. I think there's a lot of people out there that desperately need help, and they just don't have a way of communicating, or they feel scared to, or they feel like they're going to be ridiculed, that's what my idea for this song is to open up the conversation on that.
In listening to you, I want to sort of explore the idea of your own musical influences and background. What were some of your biggest musical influences, and how have they impacted your work on this new single, Out of This World?
Yeah, a lot of bands that I grew up listening to. I was a huge fan of Kiss. That's what got me started on this whole journey. Bands like Journey, Earth, Wind and Fire, all these different types of music obviously influences me. I'm like a sponge when it comes to music. And I thank my parents for that, because I grew up, like I said, in a house where all kinds of music was being played, whether it was jazz, R&B, rock, soul, and so I felt so blessed to be able to grow up in a time where I can take that all in, and so everything has obviously inspired me and continues to, newer bands like Muse and things of that nature, that there's a message behind their music. And I think with my previous project with Disciples, it was about that. It was about righting the wrongs of what's going on in the world, from a political stance. This one is more about just trying to unite people to just love one another, and you just never know what's going on with somebody. You know what I'm saying? I tend to do this a lot, where I'll go somewhere only because I need to get out, and I just need to try to feel like I'm surrounded around people, whether I'm talking to them or not. It's just that feeling of like, okay, there's human beings around me, and I tend to observe people. And it's a funny exercise that I do. I tend to look and I just try to figure out, what is that person thinking right now? What is going on? And you just never know what's happening with people. And that's kind of the cathartic part about writing this song, is just about creating that awareness for people, and for people to just check on one another. And if somebody needs help, to speak out and to try to get that help, because I think we're living in this world that we're becoming more and more isolated, and it's more and more siloed, and we're all in our silos. Ever since this whole pandemic has come and gone, I feel like we're still kind of in that siloed world. And I think that could have a really negative effect on what's happening with humanity.
No, I completely agree with you. I think that's kind of a modern condition that we're living in. I mean, so much of what you've talked about, historically, it's like it's a lifetime of experiences that you have, that you're bringing to this. And I sort of want to sort of talk about some of those with you. You've played. You've been a player and in bands for a very, very long time, since you were really young. And I'm curious, you've shared stages with some very, very big iconic acts in the past. And I'm curious, how have those experiences influenced your music, do you feel?
In a great way, just seeing how these bands that I've loved for so many years, to be able to share stages with them and everything, you kind of like, you're a sponge in that setting. You're trying to look at how people are running their productions, how the whole thing is happening, and how everything comes together. And so I think those are all very influential with me, production standpoint, from a business standpoint. I mean, all of those things, like I told you earlier, the music that my mother and my father played were so pivotal to me becoming the listener that I am today, in terms of like listening to all types of music. Even though my area has been one area of rock, hard rock, metal, those kind of arenas, I'm more open to listening to everything, and I love listening to everything, and I love all styles of music. So yeah, those have been very influential, having those opportunities to play with those larger bands, and trying to take those experiences of like, wow, I really like what they did there, or I didn't like that, and just kind of apply it to my world of what I would or wouldn't do. It's really a cool exercise to kind of see what you would do and what you wouldn't do.
One of the things that I've always been drawn to you on is your commitment to really learning, your commitment to doing projects and learning what it takes to do it on your own. I think that's a characteristic of you as a man and as an artist that's really, really admirable. And so my question is, can you share or talk about the so-called do-it-yourself ethos that you've sort of, it's elevated your career? How has that, can you talk more about that? Because I think that's a very, very important aspect of who you are as an artist.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've had champions. You've been a champion of mine. My parents, friends, obviously those are the obvious people that have been champions. But in terms of people, like maybe from an industry standpoint, there's been a few here and there, but never been that one that's like lighting the torch for you. And I think as artists, really it could be beneficial to have that champion. In my case and my story, why this do-it-yourself ethos has been part of my life since the very beginning was I felt like if nobody's going to do it, I have to do it. There's just no other way. I'm going to need to do what I need to do. And that's exactly how I've lived my musical career and life is just learning, like you said, a lifelong commitment to learning things and to doing what I needed to do in order to get from point A to point B. So for me, it's very rewarding because yes, you may not have this huge conglomerate behind you that's working towards one goal, but by yourself, I like writing my own story. And I think I will continue to do that. I'm fiercely independent just in my own life. So this is obviously a product of that. And so I feel like I love the fact that I can write my own story, which is exactly what I'm doing now with this song and why I decided to leave the project and continue moving forward. Because I feel, like I said, I have a lot to say. There's a lot to still get out there. So the do-it-yourself thing has been something that I've been so used to. There's been nothing else in my life to base it on. I've just done it. I just react to things, and if I needed to get somewhere, I'm like, okay, what do I need to do? What do I need to learn in order to get me to that next step or that next phase of my career? And that's what I've done, and that's what I've learned. And it's just been something that's been ingrained to me. I don't know any other way to do it. So that's kind of to answer that question.
It's so interesting because I see that quality in you. As an artist and as a person. And I've always admired it because I think that, just confessing here, one of the things that I fight as I've gotten older is, that phrase you've probably heard is the dying of the light.
Right.
And it's that thing of, well, we've got to learn that and we've got to get that thing done. Whereas, the darkness in me is more like, just back off and ease up on that, or don't where you just stop caring.
Right. It doesn't happen.
You just stop caring.
Yeah, there's moments when the depression hits in that feeling happens, but I think what keeps me going is, number one, the work is, they say when you love something, it doesn't feel like work. Well, what I do on a daily basis, as you know, to me, I love it. And so it doesn't feel like work to me. It may be hard on some days. You have a harder day than others, but it does not feel, this is what I'm super passionate about. So, and I don't know if that's just the airy side of me that I'm so incredibly driven. But when I do feel like those moments where you talked about, where the light as you're getting older goes out, for me, if anything, it's gotten even more intense of wanting to, because like I said, I feel like you do get at a station of life where you realize there's less years away from you than there's more. And so you better, and that's one of the main reasons why I realized I had to stop what I was doing with that in order to move forward with this. And so, yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, but with me, I just feel like I'm so driven and committed to doing what I'm doing that I feel like I haven't gotten to where I needed to be. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Not to quote the U2 song, but you know what I mean. So there's still something there that I feel that I need to get across, and I don't know if that light will die down or not. But right now, it just seems it's as strong as ever. But I do understand what you're saying. There is that kind of thing. And the depression and those kind of instances, when those episodes happen, it does pull you away from that. But for some reason, there'll be something that happens. I might be going through like a spell there for a while, but then something happens and in an instant, it just changes. And I'm like, okay, now I'm back. It's almost like the record went off the groove and it's making that noise, where it's repeating itself. And then it just kicks back in and it starts playing again. And so that's what I think sometimes happens to me when I do go through those downhill, because it is a roller coaster ride. As you know, I don't have to tell you this, but as an artist, you're dealing with all this stuff, and you're dealing with, the rejection, and, you deal with the good with the bad, but it's a roller coaster ride. And so I've just somehow learned how to relegate that and manage it, I think, better.
No, definitely. And I want to apply what you've just said to the song Out of This World. What was the most challenging part of creating the song Out of This World for you?
I think the most challenging thing was probably that I didn't have people to maybe bounce it off of. I mean, I think I played you the initial demo when I first did it. I mean, I knew that instinctively that this was a very strong song. Especially after I finally came up with the chorus. I was kind of stuck for a while with the chorus. I didn't know where to go, and I kept writing choruses. And then finally, when I came out with that one, I was like, that's it. It was like everything clicked into place. So I already knew instinctively it was a very strong song. I think what I didn't have was bouncing it off other people necessarily. And I guess because I had just come off of being in the band situation, now I didn't have 3 other guys to like talk to and say, hey, what do you think of, now it was just, I was basing it all on my gut instincts and what I thought, or I had to figure it out on my own. And then presenting it to the producers, which we'll, obviously we'll talk about later, that produced this, that did just such an amazing job. That was the other thing, trying to articulate. And we had a strong demo. The demo sounds more or less very similar in the arrangement, and everything that you hear sounds like the final product, but the producer just took it from one level to a complete other level. So in terms of answering that question, I think that was probably the toughest thing, that I didn't have that fallback of other people to say, hey, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? It was just all riding on me. And that's the realities of being a solo artist, that now everything is riding on you, and every decision that you make is riding on you. And you have to, if you need to move this forward, it's like, I got to decide, what am I going to do? Is this good, bad? Okay. And then just move forward to the next step, if that makes sense.
No, it makes total sense. I want to go back for a minute. You talked about the song and your experience with the band, but this song in particular, at the time of the pandemic, how did the pandemic influence the creation of Out of This World for you creatively?
Yeah, I think in every way, like I mentioned earlier, the song is a very, very sad song, even though in the final production, it sounds more uplifting than what I thought it would. But that goes with, it goes back to the idea of when you think of a song in your head and then how you envision it coming out, but it never comes out necessarily exactly how you want it. It ended up coming out more uplifting than what I originally had conceived, but it was good. It was a happy accident that happened, which I ended up liking it after getting used to it. But in terms of the pandemic influencing it, yes, by all means, the pandemic had 80% to do with it. The band, me leaving, that I was planning to leave the band, had a lot to do with it. The loss of my grandmother, the idea of just being like this, in this kind of state of just being really, I mean, like I told you earlier, I love being alone, and there's a beauty to that, but there's also a dark side of being too much alone. And so all of those things contributed. But the pandemic, yes, it captures the vibe. What you hear in that song, and you think the pandemic and everything that everybody went through, to me, that was my picture of it. Like I said, it's a very dark song in many ways.
Yeah, and it's about escaping. It's about
exactly
release and getting someplace rather than where you are.
Right.
And I want to go back to something that you had said before, which is that, it's that idea of, you mentioned that the song is about, outcasts, loners. You mentioned that yourself, that you're very much alone. How do you think they're going to relate to the song?
Well, I think we're going to be kindred spirits, because I think that this song captures the vibe of that. Again, I don't want to, my whole idea is to bring people, to start the conversation of what this song really means and what it's about, and the bigger conversation of, like I said earlier, checking in on other people and really asking the question, is this person really okay? And the person themselves that's struggling and dealing with it, like you or I that are dealing with it, that we do have an outlet to talk to somebody, or that release valve that we can release what's going on, that tension or whatever it is that we're dealing with at that moment. So what I'm hoping with this song is that it's going to draw those people together and bring us together in a community where we can talk about that more, and maybe be a beacon for each other. And that's kind of what I want to do with this, is to start a bigger conversation, and, not only with this song, but the other ones that are coming, and how that's going to evolve. And so my goal with this is to hopefully attract those people, and then bring us all together, and then to discuss more in detail and try to talk about what everybody's struggling with, and try to maybe help some people in the process.
On that note, can you share with us some of the personal experiences and emotions that you drew upon in your own life when writing the song?
the loss of my grandmother was a big one. Just death, which I told you that's a big subject that you and I have spoken of personally over the years, where that fear of death that one has, which I've struggled with that a lot and tried to deal with that in therapy and everything. And so it was just all of those things, the isolation, not knowing at the time, was there going to be a vaccine? Was there, what was going to turn out with this? I mean, it was a very scary time when all this was going. I mean, it was just something like you see out of a movie, which was crazy. And maybe that's another reason why I didn't even think that's why I wrote about this escape, was because of all this that was going on and how we were isolated so much. So it was a flurry of emotions. It was that sadness of that something is coming to an end. Like I knew that was going to come to an end with the band, and how sad that was for me. And just all of those things, I think, were a cumulative effect that contributed to it. And so what you're hearing is an exact kind of reflection of what was going on at that time in my life.
Also, in listening to the song, you also explore themes of isolation. You've mentioned depression. There's also this element of self-discovery as well. And can you tell us, I guess, more about, why these particular themes are so important to you?
Like I said, because I think there's a lot of people that are dealing with this, obviously more than what we think and what we know, and you just never know who it is that's struggling. And that's why I wrote this song, was to create more of an awareness of what's happening to people. And the person that you might think has got it all together and everything is great, really maybe not really great, and there's a lot of things going on, and maybe they're afraid to express themselves. And I think that's what happens a lot. This is what happened with the Me Too movement, with women not sharing because they felt that they were going to be chastised. And it's one of those situations where I feel like people need to become more emotive and expressive. So all of those themes were part of it. And then there was also, like I said, there was a beautiful part about it that where I felt like it brought people together in certain ways, like people that have families, that it forced them to like get back to basics. Like, we can't go anywhere. We can't do anything. Let's play some games. Let's have dinner together, which is a really big thing that doesn't happen anymore, with people sitting at a dinner table together as a family and just trying to see how their day is going, doing more activities. We're so wrapped up, as you know, you and I talk about this all this time, about the distractions of just how we're marketed to on so many levels.
Sure.
And all of the things that distract us from our day. It really forced us to really look at what was important. And I thought that would have happened during 9/11, which it did for a period, but then it kind of went back to the way it was. And I'm hoping that the pandemic, in a weird way, which is the beautiful part of it, which there wasn't many beautiful parts about it, but the one, I think, silver lining on that was to hopefully make people realize what's really important in this life. And so those were the themes of how they inspired the song.
There's also the element in the song, I guess, which is, I don't know how to put it. So the enigmatic world of summoning aliens and, embarking on like this willful alien abduction, which is, kind of about, it relates to themes of being rescued and so forth.
Right.
Can you elaborate on that? Like, was there a specific reason why you chose that, or was that just the device you used to
It was almost,
get away?
Yeah, it was the metaphor for what I was trying to express in the song. I mean, obviously, I'm a huge science fiction fan. I love things like, this was a big influence too, Stranger Things, all
Sure.
the Close Encounters, all those kind of thematic things, E.T., all of those things about, the idea that there's life in other planets. And there's a lot of theories about that whole idea that all of these aliens and people, the things that have come about have been to protect ourselves from ourselves, because they don't want us to destroy the planet for bigger reasons. Some of the themes and some of the theories that people have said, that's why they, you hear about these incidents that happen at nuclear sites where something bad was going to happen and then they saw something in the sky. And I don't know whoever's listening to this, what you subscribe to, but I definitely think that there's definitely other forms of life. It just cannot be us. I hate to burst anybody's bubble that doesn't believe that. I just cannot think that there's nothing else on this universe than just us here on Earth. So it was exploring that idea of, I've had it here, like, let me see what else is out there. And so the idea of the song is to send out these communications and try to see if somebody will respond. And within this context of the song, there is that frequency that I finally connect to where it connects to them. And so they're telling me, we're going to pick you up at a certain time and at a certain date. You just be there. And so that, I guess when I discovered that theme, that's what answered the whole question for me, the 360-degree approach of the song. As a writer, we tend to use metaphors to express other things that we're trying to get across. So in this idea, the storyline was calling these people, letting them take me and let me see what else is out there on the other side that nobody has seen before. So that's kind of the idea behind the song and the theme.
Yeah, it's got a lot of themes, science fiction themes, I guess. Are you a big fan of Stranger Things?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Stranger Things. Anything sci-fi, I've grown up obviously in that world, and I love all that stuff. So for me, it was a perfect way to explain what it was that I was trying to get across with the bigger theme of the song. So, and since I'm so passionate about it, I loved it. So
let me ask you, how does Out of This World blur the lines between imagination and reality? I mean, you just finished talking about how you are a science fiction fan, but, obviously I don't, you've never been abducted,
right.
But yet, how does
well, you never know, Rich. I may be abducted soon. Who knows after this song?
Absolutely. So, how does Out of This World blur those lines between the imagination and reality?
Yeah, well, I think you have to have a little bit of imagination when you're writing something about this in it. And to me, it was such a perfect marriage of the two ideas of blurring those lines between reality, what's real and what's not. Although I do believe that there are other alien life out there that we're just starting to understand more and more with more events that continue to happen around the globe. Yeah, that blurring of that whole idea is just another tool that I have in terms of when you're writing these stories. I mean, that's why I think I love writing music, because they're these short stories that you have to be very, very direct with when you're writing them in terms of what you're trying to get across on in a 3.5-minute song. It's not like I'm writing a book or a novel. It's a short piece that you have to kind of put everything and try to encapsulate everything into that moment of that song. And so there was that idea of blurring what was real and what wasn't in there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a big theme of it. Eric, can you share about your collaboration with Sean Zuzek, Josh Booma, and Joe Bosey on the track Out of This World?
These guys are amazing. Actually, I had reached out to Joe Bosey, which is an amazing mastering engineer who's done like every huge band on the planet. I had reached out to him initially when I started putting out feelers. If you recall, I had even reached out to you asking if you knew of any producers or anything that works in that arena that I could reach out to. And Joe, I mean, he hit it out of the park. I sent him an email and he says, I know of one guy that you need to reach out to. And it was Sean Zuzek. And he mentioned, Sean and Josh. And so I reached out to Josh and we had a meeting where I went to the studio to check out what they have done. And I was just completely floored. I mean, Joe hit it out of the park in terms of like, these were the exact people that I needed to work with at that time. They're just amazing. Sean is just an amazing producer, really gifted. Josh, amazing player as well too. And so they're a team and they work together. They have a studio out in Gardena. And, I went out, I had the meeting with them, played them the demo, told them what I was after in terms of the vision of the song and everything. And they completely hit that out of the park.
That's great when you find that, that kind of creative collaboration that you're talking about with people. Can you talk about what were some of the most rewarding moments for you during the production of Out of This World?
Yeah, when I finally got to hear the first draft of what they had come up with after the initial meetings that we had. It was a few weeks went by, and then they played me the first build of the song taken from the demo. And I just, when you hear things at first, you're kind of, first of all, you're trying to feel things out with people because this is somebody, people that I've never worked with before. So there's that kind of like trust building that you're trying to build at that time. So I didn't know what to expect, but initially when I heard the song, I was just floored because I was like, man, the production was just really incredible. It took me a little bit to kind of get used to it, but I've already learned my lesson before. When I first hear things, I just need to I need to sit with them and just listen to it over and over again. But it was, again, it was the same thing that happened when I cut the demo. it was the same feeling. I didn't want to stop listening to it. I just kept wanting to hear it over and over. And then as I kept hearing it, it just got its hooks into you. And I was like, man, this is taking it to a whole other level. So yeah, they completely took that song and took it to another level that was, no pun intended, out of this world. I mean, it was amazing. It was just amazing to hear it. So
Yeah, you know, you're describing the I guess the addictive quality.
Nature,
Yeah, the
of the
addictive
song.
nature. What elements of the song do you think contribute to this addictive quality?
It just right from the beginning, you hear that synth that's moving. And I kind of have this idea. I mean, the whole idea of that song, it's like, that song needs to be listened to at night. You know, we're fortunate that you and I live here in California. You can drive and take one of those drives, whether it's on PCH or here in the valley where you can go down Mulholland Drive. And it's a song that you listen to at night, like in the middle of the night. And you kind of soak it in with a really great sound system. And yeah, it's just one of those things that from the moment you hear it, it just slowly just gets into you. And the few people that have heard the song, which now by the time you're hearing this, hopefully everybody's heard the song, you might get the same feeling. But yeah, it was just one of those things that was just a very addictive nature to the song. I couldn't explain. And I still, I still listen to it and still have that same feeling. That's how I knew it was a special song, you know.
You know, you've mentioned that the song, it represents a bold new musical statement from you. And I'm wondering, can you elaborate on that for us as to what that statement is?
Yeah, well, like I said, the idea is the boldness of it is just, I think, the direction that it's going in. It's definitely a great starting point of the first message that I wanted to reintroduce into the world as me doing this again from a solo standpoint. So I thought it was a great first statement to come out with. Again, the bigger picture is wanting to help people and build that part of the whole idea of making music, because music is healing. And I feel like I can try to do that with what I'm doing with people. And so the boldness and just the direction of the song, I mean, I'm going to be taking some left turns with the music that's coming after this. So it's not going to be what people are expecting. So this one was kind of like the statement of like, I'm still here and this is what I'm about right now. And so I'm excited to just take people on this journey and see where it goes.
I want to ask you something about the song itself. Why, two-parter, why was it important for you to surprise even your own family with the release? And how did you manage to keep it so, I guess, top secret?
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea was I wanted this to be special for everybody to hear. And I just realized that early on, and I guess I kept within the theme of the song. You know, you think about aliens and, Area 51 and how everything is so top secret. I mean, I drove some of my close personal friends. I told you a million times, please don't say. I mean, I was trying to keep this very, very quiet for a number of reasons, because number one, I dropped out of social media for a couple of years. And so nobody heard what was going on. And that was one thing. And it was, part of it was purposely done, but I didn't have anything to say at that point. So I just wanted to stay quiet until I was ready to come out with this message. And so I felt the need to just keep it from everybody, even my own family, which by now the cat will be out of the bag by when the time they hear this. But it was just one of those things that I felt it important, because that's the way that I approach things. And I think you've known that about me, that I try to approach things at such a high level that I just wanted it to be like a shock to everybody. Like, oh, wow, this is what's happening now. And I feel like the song deserves that kind of like subtlety of like, now it's out. I just wanted it to be a surprise. And so I just really like drove people, some of the close people that did know what was going on, to please not say anything, to please not blow my cover with any of this, because I just wanted to be a surprise for everybody. So
Eric, I wanted to ask you, you had a very unique approach to rolling out of this world. And I was wondering if you could share your thoughts and ideas behind that process. It was very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the idea behind it, and I mean, you and I have spoken about this several times with people that we've interviewed over the years, and we talk about it all the time. What's the most important thing to get is people's attention in this day and age.
It's also the hardest.
It's also the hardest. And so when I was thinking about how am I going to present this, how am I going to make any kind of impact or in the rollout of doing this, because again, people are going to be listening to this after the fact that it's come out, and I wanted to explain what were the reasonings behind what I did. And you're talking about the 3 videos that I put out that were leading up to the announcement of the song.
Yes.
And the first video, which I played it for you, and I think you told me you better tell your family, which I did tell them that.
Yeah.
That was the only thing that I revealed to them was there's videos coming out. I'm okay. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not going crazy. I'm not losing my mind, but this is just something that I have to do. You'll know when it finally comes out. So by the time they hear this, it's all, the cat's out of the bag. But the idea was, how am I going to try to make an impact, and how am I going to serve the deeper message of the song? And so the first of these 3 videos is of me sitting there in my room, and there's these words that are coming out, just saying what they're saying, the words fail, and I've been silent and I remember I played that for you, and you were like it definitely created the impact that I wanted.
It was very
visceral.
It was visceral because it was so disturbing. It was dark. You definitely captured my attention.
Right.
Like you achieved that brilliantly and with a lot of power.
Yeah. And so that was one. And then as the story goes, the second video, I'm like, I think, in one of the mountains here in California, somewhere in Mulholland Drive, I think I put myself in, and with the messaging, the universe is speaking, but are you listening? So again, it's leading people like, what the hell is this whole thing about? And then in the third and final video, I think I'm standing behind these 2 antennas, and I'm saying, have you ever had the feeling like you're being watched, or like there's a message that was meant for you? And now I'm finally ready to reveal what it is. And then, the reveal comes of the announcement of this. Why I did it, I wanted to create that attention. I didn't want to necessarily scare the shit out of people of like my health or well-being, but it goes back to the point of what I'm saying about this song and what it is that's going on. People need help, and people are not expressing that help. And it could turn into more serious things that happen for those people. And so in a weird kind of way, yes, I'm doing this thing, and people are wondering what is going on with this human being. But the whole idea of that message, that it was meant just for you, that's what this meant, that this message of this song is just for you, meaning the person that's the outcast, the loner, the person that feels like they don't belong. This message is for you. I've been listening. I've been tuning into this frequency for a long time. And now it's time to reveal what that is. And so that was the idea behind it. It came to me one night that I was just like, trying to figure out what's the angle that I'm going to do. How can I get a really impactful thing to when it finally comes out, and then express to people, this is the reason why these things were happening, why I did this. And so I'm hoping whoever listens to this will realize what the real reason why I was doing this for.
How do you handle, I guess, the pressure and the excitement of releasing something like this after such a significant time out?
It's tough because, like any musician will tell you, you want to be constantly moving. You want to be constantly, especially in the world that we're in now, that you're wanting to put out content all the time, and new songs and everything. And so it was tough, but I've learned to be patient over the years. Where it comes time to release something, at the time of this taping, we're in the middle of like the campaign that we'll talk about later, but it's something where you just have to be very patient. And I just learned that I needed to be patient with this. And I think timing is everything when it comes to these things. And I base a lot of things on gut instinct, which you and I have talked about over the years with some of the people that we've talked to in our journey together. So for me, it was something it wasn't necessarily, there is pressure because as a musician, you always, and I know that everybody's not going to understand what this is about, and not everybody's going to like it. I don't want to be all things to all people from a music standpoint. And I know that I can be very comfortable with that. But on the other side, there is that insecurity that we have as musicians, which we all have our insecurities in a certain way, that how it's going to be accepted and how it's going to translate. You have a vision in your head of what you think is going to happen, but not until it actually does happen will you get that kind of feedback. So that's been something that I've been thinking of for a long time. But I feel like this time in my life now, coming back full circle and doing this again as a solo artist, I feel like I've done a lot of things in my life, and you and I have talked about this a lot, where we do things for other people and sometimes it's for the wrong reasons. I feel like this time in my life, I want to do this for myself. This one is for me. this one is for me now. And I know that sounds like a very egotistical thing to say from a standpoint of in music. I really want this to be this one about me and trying to, I've always been wanting to help people and doing all that, but I felt like this one really needed to come in terms of what I was trying to express from me. And moving forward, everything that I release, I just want it to be about those things. And I want them to be pieces of art. This is art that I'm doing, or I feel that I'm doing. And I want to treat each one of these songs, because they're your babies. It's so personal. It's so personal when you're putting yourself out there, and especially with this type of subject matter and this type of song. And so, yeah, that's kind of what my idea is in my head is about that.
Yeah, it's so interesting listening to you, because as you were speaking about that, I'm reflecting on a song that it was many years ago in the 70s called "It's My Turn." And it was all about those themes,
right?
That you just expressed about, you've done so many things, and you and I have talked about that, so many things, and, you want to be there for other people, and a lot of my own Michigas and stuff in my head is, don't be selfish,
right.
Give for others, but then you have to give for yourself. And one of the things that I realize, and I want to ask you about this as well, is that in doing that, especially coming from your situation creatively and as an artist, you're starting over again.
Right.
You're starting over from like,
zero.
Zero, from like you had the band situation, and now you're starting over on your own. So, what does that mean to you? What does starting over, I guess, mean to you, both as an artist and on a personal level as well?
Well, first of all, it's scary as shit. I mean, you're starting from zero. I mean, there is the base, if you want to call it, of the band that we had, which we had an international base, but I'm looking to start it from scratch. I want a whole new audience, a whole new world, the people that have never heard who the hell this guy is, and that's what I'm going after. But it is nerve-wracking, because you're starting again from zero, and I've been down this road several times. And what's that saying they say? You got to fail a lot to succeed.
You have to fail to succeed. Yes. And that means staying in the game.
And that means staying in the game. And for me, this is what I love. It's, you and I always use the references of The Godfather. It's like, just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in. And it's just something that I feel like there's nothing else. This is what I have to do. I feel this is my mission personally in life, that I have to do this. And so starting from scratch, yeah, it's scary, but it's very exhilarating and exciting at the same time, because I look at it as a new beginning, a new chance to conquer something that I haven't done before. And I can feel like that's a great opportunity.
How would you like your fans or, citizens to react to this new phase in your own musical journey?
Well, I would hope that they would be very excited, and to know that the journey's just beginning, and that I hope that the people that do come on board are along for the ride. And it's just not, I don't want this to feel like it's about me, because I think it's a bigger thing. Yes, I'm the vessel. Eric Knight is the vessel of that, but I want it to be more about not me, about the bigger mission, about, like I said, helping people through music and trying to unite people, as opposed to divide, like we've been doing for the last few years now, where it's just gotten really depressing in a lot of ways. And so my whole idea is I want my music to unite people and to bring people together.
You affectionately refer to your fans as citizens. What's the story behind the name Citizens for your fans?
Well, I just thought that we're all citizens of the world. And I thought that what a great way to be able to name the audience. And I feel like everybody has a voice and everybody has their story to say. And I want to be able to shine a light on those people, not me, but just try to turn it around and shine a light on those people and what their message is and what struggles that they're dealing with. And I figured that would be a great way to address everybody as citizens, because we all are in our own way.
Yeah, no, we absolutely are. So let's talk about the song and the single itself, Out of This World. When and where can fans expect to listen to Out of This World for the first time?
Well, by the time that they hear this, it'll already be out, but it's officially going to be out on April 12th, which I thought was very ironic, because in 2024, April 12th falls on a Friday, where new releases tend to come out on Fridays, and it's also the day of my birthday, which I thought would be apropos to a rebirth, a new beginning, and starting over again. So it was just serendipitous that it happened to fall on that day of my birthday. So I'm hoping that it's an omen. It's a good omen that it's going to be something to kind of build off of.
In addition to being released on your birthday, there's also going to be, I believe, a special limited CD for Out of This World. And what can fans expect from that particular edition?
I thought of a unique kind of idea that had come to me about what about if I walked the person through the journey of how the song came to be. And so the idea is we're going to put out a single of the song and you're going to have the fully produced version. And then what it's going to do, it's going to go backwards. We're going to go back to the demo, to the remixes of the song, because there is remixes that I'm doing on this that are going to come out, and it's going to be part of this package. But actually even go back further where it's showing me humming the melodies from my phone of how, I mean, literally just the embryonic stages of how that song came together, and then leading you down that journey from the song to how it began. And I thought that that would be a unique way to show people, because I think a lot of people don't know how the creative process really happens from an inception to the final stage. And so I thought it would be a cool way to show people this is how songs come together. And I'm hoping to have like a video portion of that to kind of go along with that. But yeah, it's a single. It's going to be a limited edition thing. I don't know how many we're going to do yet, but it's going to be a small run. I'm going to sign them and everything, but I think it'll be a really cool way to see how a song comes from the inception to the ending, you know, how it gets to that journey.
Yeah, it's something that it's interesting hearing you speak about that, because it's something that I value that a lot. I'm a huge process person, to want to know about that process. And, you know, there's been some classic pieces of work. I know, you know, Pete Townsend from The Who was one of the first people to ever do that, where he, in the 80s, he put out the Scoop series. He did 3 volumes of it. And what those were his work demos of very famous Who songs, just him.
Right.
Some of them are rather elaborate and sophisticated. Since then, he's put out, you know, the entire demo versions of every song on Quadrophenia and others. Pink Floyd did that on The Wall. When they re-released The Wall in a, you know, multi-CD box set, you got demos of, you know, David Gilmour learning like Comfortably Numb,
right,
and just humming the melody.
Yes, and that's
Just
exactly
humming
what
the
you're going to
melody.
get
Yeah,
on
yeah.
this, where it's me on the phone. That's some random place where the inspiration struck, and I just started singing the melody in my head. And this is how I talk to a lot of people that they'll ask me, man, how do you come up with something that just comes out of like nothing into something? And that's the way I look at when I look at artists that draw. I've always wanted to learn how to paint and draw. So when I see people that do that they can just picture something in their head and they can translate that into an actual piece of paper or digital tablet, what they're doing now, it just fucking blows me away. So I guess people are blown away like that when they see that from a musician, how that song just comes out of nowhere, which that's how it usually comes. It just comes out of, I'm just humming something and all of a sudden I'm like, wait, what the hell is this? And then I you know, you just start going through that process and building. And it's weird because once I do get the idea in my head and there's something cemented there where it's a melody, whatever it happens to be, whether there's actual lyrics. I mean, I tend to write first music. Sometimes there is a words or a lyric that comes to my head and that's how I build. But mostly it'll come from a musical place first. And then I start building it from there and then I'll start humming things and then words start coming out. And then I start putting those pieces together. And that's how that starts coming, at least in my process. One of the things that happens to me is that I listen to, you know, once I do get that cemented, I tend to hear all the parts in my head. And it's interesting because I heard Dave Grohl say this very thing in his head that happens to him when he's creating. And I tend to drive people crazy when I hear it because I'll hear the whole arrangement in my head from beginning to end. I'm hearing whether it's strings involved, piano. I can tell you, we need this here, we need this there. And it's funny because I had just seen a thing about Dave Grohl talking about this very process of how he can hear how all the parts are fitting into each other. And it's harder for me because I've never learned how to read music. And so everything has been very instinctual for me. So I've had to learn everything by ear. And so my ear is very strong in terms of that, where that goes. So I'm able to put the pieces together. It's just learning how to become more articulate with how I'm trying to get it across. And when I did present the idea to them with the song, when I presented the original demo, I then gave them a bunch of notes of what I wanted and what I was going out after with the soundscapes and the guitars. I mean, I had a very clear picture. I gave them like examples. use this guitar sound. I gave them the edge, U2, I wanted that kind of thing. In terms of the drums, I played them samples of what I wanted the drums to sound like. So at least it gives them a better picture to do that, because I don't speak that language of where I could tell them it's an A flat, it's, B minor, all that stuff. I just know what I feel sounds good in terms of putting that together. So,
is there any more that you want to tell us about the various mixes that are included in the special CD, or their significance in the creation process of the song, or
yeah,
no?
these are just mixes that I came up with from the tracks that I got. I went in there and I kind of remixed things and took some things out, and they're all space theme remixes. So, there's like a Lost in Space mix, there's the Close Encounters mix. So I tried to use all those themes in it, because it does sound real when you take out all the main music and you hear, it definitely sounds much more atmospheric and soundscapey. And I think people will love those versions too. I mean, some of those sound really cool. So
no, that's great. I'm looking forward to hearing all of the different variations of it. How would you describe the official video that's going to accompany Out of This World? Can you give us any kind of insight as to what to expect from the video of the song, or anything you want to share?
Yeah, the video, we did this with Ivan Kopeli, which is a dear friend and a great director in his own right and cinematographer. He's kind of like my new muse, a visual muse, so to speak, with when we decided to start writing the ideas for this. And we had a lot of meetings and talked about what we wanted to do and what I was trying to get across and what we could do with what we had. And I think the video came out really, really incredible. We shot that over 2 days and nights in LA and downtown Los Angeles. And so you'll see some of the sights and sounds of LA in that video. And yeah, I mean, I just thought the song, the video, the visuals definitely capture the vibe of what's going on. It's pretty much a street head performance video, but with some story mixed in there. I thought it came out fantastic, and everybody else that worked with us on that, Maria Kopeli, Ivan's wife, which was amazing, helping us, and my other dear friend that flew all the way from Florida for this, one of the guys that was sworn to secrecy, Rob Duarte, he's helped me in productions for many, many years with some of my other projects. So it was a very small crew of people, and again, keeping with that theme of keeping everything top secret, I just kept telling them, please don't say anything to anybody. I don't want this to get out. I mean, I've driven people crazy with this at this point, but yeah, what they're going to get is just a really cool performance of the video, and hopefully that's going to convert some people into wanting to continue following what's going on with me.
I want to sort of shift gears here for a minute and talk about the music business for a while. You started in the business when it was very different, and I'm just curious, how has the music industry, in your view, changed since you started your career, and how have these changes, I guess, affected your approach to creatively toward your music?
Well, I don't have to tell you, we've gone from the copy model to an access model now, so everything is now streamed to you and delivered on tap. It started out so differently where we had a lot of physical stuff going on, and now it's just changed to everything has been in a digital format. So it's just been this natural evolution of adapting to those changes and how can you apply those to what you're doing in your world. So I've always been a fan of progressing and learning the new things that are going on with the technology and how you can use that to your advantage in terms of a marketing standpoint for marketing your songs and your albums and everything. And so, yeah, for me, it's been a great way to continue with the learning that you said. That's a lifelong journey of learning and how to apply that to what you're doing. And so, yeah, I'm learning those strategies and just trying to apply them now and how to best get the best bang for your buck in terms of getting the word out there on your music.
That's the hardest part, I find. A lot of times we have music, you have music, it's the discovery of that process. What do we do that's the most effective way to get the word out about our music? And it sort of reminds me, I want to ask you a question about Out of This World. How do you hope that Out of This World is going to resonate or be received by listeners who may not know your music or be familiar with your work?
Yeah, well, like every musician, I mean, I just hope it's, like I said, I don't want to be all things to all people. And I know that that's not going to be the case with this. Not everybody's going to love it, but I do hope that the people that are turned on by it and are very curious about what this is about will look me up and just learn more about what's going on, and hopefully will become fans of the music, which is what that's the exciting part. You know, I told you there's that scary part of like not knowing, because you're always scared of how people are going to react to something that you're putting out, because it is such a personal thing. What, you know, any piece of music that you're putting out as an artist, it's very personal to you. And I take everything. There's a personal part that you take it, but I've gotten a thick skin over the years of rejection and all that stuff. So I know how to deal with that stuff, but still at the end of the day, it's a really interesting kind of thing. So the exciting part of me with this is that I'm hoping that people will dig the songs, whoever relates to that music, and will come along for the ride.
Let me ask you, you know, you've worked a lot in your life, both on your own as well as in collaborative situations with bands over the years, you know, including Disciples of Babylon and other bands in your musical journey. If you could collaborate with any artist, alive or not, who would it be and why?
Probably one of them would be, that I could think off the top of my head, David Bowie, because he was such a chameleon, and I'm just such a huge fan of what he's done in his career. I would love to just collaborate with him on a song and just pick his brain on advice on how to do what he did, because I feel like his reinvention and just where he came from and how he built this whole, you know, it's almost like he built a whole universe onto himself. And that's kind of like what I'm trying to do on my own. Not that I want to become the next David Bowie, but I'm just saying he did something so special and unique. And at the end of the day, he still was an artist that he wanted to be. He wasn't changed by like a system or like a record label. He went his own path. And that's what I have so much respect for artists like him and Madonna that have followed their own path and their own journey. Because at the end of the day, you have to feel good about what you're doing. And I feel like David Bowie, even though he's no longer with us, really did what he wanted to do. And it was his vision and only his vision. And that's kind of like what I'm trying to do. It's like my vision, and I want to be able to fully realize that vision, if that makes sense.
No, it completely makes sense. As you were speaking, I was reflecting on, and I'll have to get it to you. I was reflecting on the documentary that was just made on David Bowie's life called Bowie. It was 5 years in the making. Wow. And the interesting part about it, from what you were saying, is that David's life always was that. He always was somebody who never wanted to look back. He only wanted to look forward. But what I learned from the documentary, and it's all in his voice, the documentary is all in his voice, and they got access to his own archives, which no one's ever had before. And it took 5 years to do this, is the idea that he never owned a home, which is fascinating. He constantly traveled. And he felt that that was a key to his artistic
evolution
as an artist, was environment.
I didn't know that.
And place and time and things that he wanted to do, and what he talked about, that temptation that after Ziggy was so huge, iconic and culturally significant, the temptation to do Ziggy too, and how he just walked away from that. Exactly. And then next one walked away from it. And then, no matter how successful it was, walked away from it.
And that's what I think the significant impact of artists like that have marched to the beat of their own drum. Yeah. That they just had the vision, and they're going to do it come hell or high water, whether they're going to crash or burn. And, there was periods in time where David Bowie didn't have the popularity, but he still seemed to be in the fabric of music. And continuously with that evolution. And I didn't even know that. That's a fact that I didn't even know, that he was traveling from place to place. And I guess that would influence like a lot of those albums with the Berlin, those 3 albums from Berlin that were big.
Well, he was living there for those.
Right. That's what I'm saying. But, and it reflects that kind of ambiance of the music that he was putting out at that time. But yeah, I've always been drawn to artists like that have just marched to their beat of their own drum, and they're just going to do it no matter what, whether it's good, bad, they're going to crash or burn, and they're just going to see it through. Those have been the ones that I've always been attracted to.
Yeah. And the other interesting thing about that, on that theme, is that he talked about how creatively, his inspiration creatively didn't only come from music. It came from art.
Right.
It came from sculpture.
Right.
It came from painting. It came from film. It came from technology.
Right.
And he talks all about that. So same question.
A lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Same question to you now. How do you stay creatively inspired when writing?
Yeah, I think it's everything. I'm like a sponge. I mean, everything influences the people that I'm observing. That I told you earlier in the interview that I would just stay and I love to observe people, whether it's in a restaurant or in a bookstore, which I frequent a lot, or just outside, just observing people. I get energy from people, and that's what kind of comes with the stories. Obviously, what I read about, what I watch on TV, all of those things I think all play a cognitive role in my creation process, and that's how these things manifest themselves for me.
You know, Eric, you have very successfully rolled out this particular release in a very top secret way and a very interesting and innovative way creatively, you know, building a story and getting reaction and attention from people. And I'm curious, can we expect more top secret releases from you in the future regarding releases, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this one just happened to be because of the theme and everything, and it was because it was going to be my first time reintroducing myself after being gone for so long from social media and just not making any kind of statements or anything. I wanted it to be that way because I wanted the impact of when it finally came out to be like, oh, okay, now I see what's going on, and I wanted it to be startling. And I'm hoping that the reaction that the few people that have heard the song that have gotten that would have that same reception. So I don't know that I'm going to be doing anything top secret necessarily again for these things. I think the next one is just going to be like, it's going to come out and it's just going to happen. There's not going to be necessarily maybe any buildup. There just will come out. I don't know, but we'll have to see. But in terms of this, to the enormity that I did this in, I don't know that I would do this again, only because there were several reasons why I wanted to do it in this way. I wanted it to just be a surprise.
What is it you want listeners to take away? What message do you want them to take away from Out of This World?
Well, like I said, that things are tough, and we all have our own personal demons and themes that we're dealing with on a daily basis, and that hopefully that if you listen to the song, you realize that there's more to things, that you can reach out to somebody. I think hopefully what I'm hoping is people that don't have a voice or don't feel like they feel like they're going to bother somebody. That's been my theme that you and I have both dealt with, that we feel like we're troubling people, and I have that. It's a really bad habit that I have, that I don't want to inconvenience anybody. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, God. Do I? No,
you know what I'm saying?
Of course I do.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
so,
my theme.
Yeah.
Right.
So my whole thing is that I'm hoping, and I have to, and I'm learning that it's an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing thing that we wrestle with every day. I'm learning to try to voice when I need help or something, which I didn't do in the past. And so what I'm hoping is with this song that it triggers the conversation, which is, like I said, it's happening now a lot. We're becoming more and more accustomed to the idea of mental health and the mental well-being and the problems that people are having, but it's still very pervasive. And so what I'm hoping is that this will stir more of a conversation, and maybe somebody hears this song and hears this interview and realizes what it's about, that they'll come out and say something to somebody. I need help. I need something because I feel like I'm going to, jump off the ledge or whatever it happens to be. And so that's what my ultimate goal with this is. Remember, like I said, I want to unite people. I don't want to divide, and I want to build this community of people, of like-minded people that want to help people, or that at least can talk amongst each other and maybe help each other. Maybe they're afraid to talk to their family, but maybe they can talk to a stranger.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what my ultimate goal is with this.
Can you give us any kind of hint of what's next after Out of This World, or what kind of plans or ideas you have for the future?
Yeah, the way that I'm kind of treating this is that, like I told you earlier, I think I alluded to it earlier, I'm taking these pieces of music, like if they're pieces of art, and I'm not trying to compare myself to anybody. So anybody listening, I'm not trying to say I'm Picasso or anything like that. But what I am saying is I'm trying to take these as a piece of art, putting them out there and really giving it the love and the attention that it deserves. I mean, you and I both know from the business side, it's more singles driven now than an album piece. And so I'm planning to put more of these songs out, but individually as singles, and really treat those as like I feel they should. Works of art that I want to give it all the attention and shine all the light on this, and try to see how many people I can help with this song, and then with the next song, and the next one after that. So there's going to be more singles that are coming out, and maybe in the future there might be some kind of collective album EP thing. I'm not really quite sure. But right now I'm just focused on this piece right now, which is Out of This World. And then in a few months there'll be another thing that's going to come out, and then, on and on and on. So that's kind of my approach now for the time being, is to do that.
Eric, I can't thank you enough.
Thank you for having
really,
me.
really appreciate you doing this.
I can't think of anybody else to do this with but you, so I'm honored, and I love you, and thank you for doing this.
Well, I love you too, and I can't thank you enough for allowing me to be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you.